There's a woman in Dallas who earns $48,000 a year. She's never read a finance book. She doesn't follow the stock market. She couldn't explain what an index fund is if you asked her. But she has $35,000 in savings, zero debt, and has never once felt financially stressed. There's a man in Boston earning $95,000. He subscribes to 3 financial newsletters. He checks his portfolio daily. He can explain compound interest in his sleep. And last month, he overdrafted his checking account. The difference between these two people isn't knowledge. It isn't income. It isn't luck. It's a set of psychological patterns that most people never develop because nobody teaches them. These patterns don't show up on a resume or a bank statement. They show up in how you talk about money with friends, how you react when life gets expensive, and what your brain does with financial stress before you're even aware of it. Today, I'm going to show you 6 psychological signs that someone has genuinely mastered money, not on a spreadsheet, but in their nervous system. And if you recognize yourself in most of these, you might be better with money than you think. Here's what most people get wrong about financial skill. They think it's about math, budgets, percentages, spreadsheets. But a 2023 study published in the Journal of Financial Psychology found something that surprised even the researchers. Mathematical ability had almost no correlation with long-term wealth accumulation. The strongest predictor wasn't IQ, income, or education. It was emotional regulation, the ability to manage how you feel in the presence of financial decisions. Think about that. The person who walks past a 50% off sign without their heart rate changing builds more wealth than the person who can balance a spreadsheet to the penny. The person who doesn't feel a void after a bad day that only a checkout cart can fill ends up with more money than someone with a finance degree and zero impulse control. Money management isn't a math skill, it's a psychological skill. And the people who are genuinely great at it share specific mental patterns that operate beneath conscious awareness. Let me walk you through all 6. Sign number 1. They feel genuinely comfortable talking about money. Most people would rather discuss their health problems, their relationship failures, even their worst fears before they'll tell you what's in their bank account. Money is the last taboo. A 2024 survey by Empower found that 60% of Americans would rather talk about their weight than their salary. And 40% said money is the single most stressful topic they could bring up with a partner. But people with high money management skills have a completely different relationship with money conversations. They can discuss what they earn, what they spend, and what they owe without their voice changing, without deflecting with humor, without shame leaking through the edges. This isn't oversharing, it's psychological integration. Psychologists use the term ego-syntonic to describe behaviors and realities that a person has fully accepted as part of who they are. For most people, their financial situation is ego-dystonic. It clashes with how they see themselves. They avoid the topic because engaging with it forces them to confront the gap between where they are and where they think they should be. People who've mastered money have closed that gap, not necessarily by earning more, but by aligning their financial behavior with their actual values. There's no dissonance to protect, so the conversation carries no threat. Sign number 2, they don't use money to regulate their identity. Here's a pattern that affects people at every income level, but almost nobody recognizes in themselves. Most spending isn't about the object. It's about who you become when you own it. The premium gym membership isn't about fitness. It's about being someone who has a premium gym membership. The designer bag isn't about carrying things. It's about the version of yourself that carries a designer bag. Psychologists call this identity-based consumption, and research from the Journal of Consumer Psychology shows that it accounts for a far larger share of spending than most people realize. A 2022 study found that when participants were asked to explain their most recent non-essential purchase, 73% gave practical reasons: comfort, quality, durability. But when researchers tracked the actual decision-making process through real-time journaling, the dominant driver in most cases was identity reinforcement. People bought things that confirmed the story they wanted to tell about themselves. People with high money management skills have detached their identity from their possessions. They don't need a car to feel successful. They don't need a watch to feel accomplished. Their sense of self is built on internal foundations: competence, relationships, values, not on what's visible to strangers. This doesn't mean they never buy nice things. It means when they do, they're buying the thing, not the identity. And that distinction saves enormous amounts of money over a lifetime because identity is bottomless. There's always a more expensive version of who you could appear to be. Sign number 3, they have a high tolerance for financial boredom. This one surprises people. but it might be the most reliable indicator of all. The vast majority of good money management is boring. Consistent contributions, saying no to the same temptations month after month. No excitement, no cleverness, just repetition. Most people can't sustain this, not because they lack discipline, but because the human brain is wired to seek novelty. Neuroscience research shows that novel stimuli trigger dopamine release, while repetitive actions gradually lose their reward signal. This is why people constantly switch financial strategies, chase trending investments, or restructure their budget every few months. The new approach feels productive. The old approach feels stale. People with high money management skills have learned to tolerate and even embrace financial monotony. They've internalized something that behavioral economists call the boring middle, the long stretch between starting a financial plan and seeing meaningful results where nothing exciting happens. A longitudinal study tracking financial behaviors over 15 years found that the single greatest predictor of wealth accumulation wasn't the strategy chosen. It was the number of months the person maintained the same strategy without changing it. Consistency beat optimization every single time. Sign number 4, they have an unusually honest relationship with their own financial weaknesses. Most people think they know where their money goes. They're almost always wrong. A 2023 study by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis found that when consumers estimated their monthly discretionary spending, they underreported by an average of 40%. Not 5%, not 10%. 40% of their own spending was invisible to them. This isn't stupidity. It's a well-documented cognitive bias called the ostrich effect, named after the myth that ostriches bury their heads in the sand. Financial researchers Carlson, Loewenstein, and Seppi found that people systematically avoid information about their own finances when they suspect the news is bad. They check their accounts less after a big purchase. They skip the credit card statement after a vacation. They round down in their heads when estimating what they've spent. People with high money management skills do the opposite. They look directly at the uncomfortable numbers. Not obsessively, not anxiously, but with a kind of clinical honesty that most people reserve for other people's finances. They know exactly which categories trip them up. One person knows they overspend on dining. Another knows they're weak for tech gadgets. A third knows they spend emotionally on their children. The specific weakness doesn't matter. What matters is that they've identified it, named it, and stopped pretending it doesn't exist. This radical self-honesty creates something psychologists call accurate self-monitoring. And research consistently shows it's one of the strongest predictors of behavioral change in any domain: spending, health, habits. You cannot manage what you refuse to see, and most people refuse to see their own financial blind spots because the truth feels like judgment. People who've mastered money have learned that seeing clearly isn't judgment, it's freedom. The number in your account isn't a verdict on your character, it's just information. And information you accept is information you can act on. Sign number 5, they don't financially perform for their social circle. There's a term in sociology called conspicuous consumption, coined by Thorstein Veblen over a century ago. It describes spending that exists primarily to signal status to others. But modern research has identified something subtler and far more common: inconspicuous consumption that's still socially driven. This looks like the parent who overspends on a birthday party, not because the child needs it, but because other parents will see it. The friend who picks up the dinner tab not out of generosity, but out of fear that splitting the bill would look cheap. The homeowner who renovates the kitchen not because it's outdated, but because every visitor will walk through it. These aren't flashy purchases. They're quiet financial performances, and they drain accounts just as effectively as any luxury purchase. A study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that households spend significantly more when they live near wealthier neighbors, even when controlling for income. Proximity to wealth increases spending independent of actual financial capacity. Your zip code is shaping your spending, and most people have no idea it's happening. People with high money management skills have developed what researchers call audience independence. Their financial decisions don't shift based on who's watching. They'll host a simple birthday party without apology. They'll suggest splitting the bill without hesitation. They'll drive an older car to a dinner party without feeling the need to explain it. Their financial behavior is the same whether they're being observed or not. Sign number 6, they treat financial setbacks as data, not identity threats. When most people face a financial setback, a job loss, an unexpected expense, a bad financial quarter, they don't just feel the practical stress. They feel shame. Because in most people's psychology, financial failure equals personal failure. This connection between money and self-worth is deeply embedded. Research by financial psychologist Dr. Brad Klontz has identified what he calls money scripts, unconscious beliefs about money formed in childhood that operate throughout adult life. One of the most common is money status, the belief that net worth equals self-worth. When someone with this script faces a financial setback, they don't just lose money, they lose a piece of their identity. The shame response triggers avoidance. People stop opening bills, stop checking accounts, stop engaging with their finances entirely. The setback compounds because the emotional response prevents rational recovery. People with high money management skills have separated their finances from their identity. When they face a setback, they experience it as a problem, not a verdict. They open the bills, they look at the numbers, they adjust the plan. There's no shame spiral because there's no identity threat. This emotional separation allows something powerful. It allows them to recover faster, learn from mistakes without defensiveness, and treat their financial life as an evolving project rather than a scorecard of their worth as a human being. Here's what's encouraging about these 6 signs. Not one of them requires higher income. Not one requires financial expertise. Every single one is a psychological pattern, which means every single one can be developed. Start here. This week, have one honest conversation about money with someone you trust. Notice what comes up emotionally. The discomfort you feel is the gap between where you are and where you've accepted yourself to be. Closing that gap is sign number 1. This month, pay attention to your next purchase over $100 and ask yourself honestly, am I buying this thing or am I buying who I'll feel like when I own it? Don't judge the answer. Just notice it. That awareness is the foundation of sign number 2. And the next time something goes wrong financially, watch your first reaction. Do you feel shame or do you feel curiosity? The distance between those two responses is the distance between someone who manages money and someone who is managed by it. That woman in Dallas with $35,000 saved on a $48,000 salary. She can't explain any of the psychology I just described. She's never heard the term ego-syntonic or identity-based consumption. She just lives these patterns. They're woven into how she experiences money. The man in Boston with $95,000 and an overdrafted account knows all the terminology. He could teach a course on personal finance. But knowing and embodying are 2 entirely different things. Money management was never about what you know. It's about who you are when nobody's watching, when the bill arrives, when the setback hits, and when the world tells you that you need more. Master that, and the math takes care of itself.